What would you do if the man who shattered your life, the man who told you you'd be nothing without him, invited you to his lavish new wedding? Nathaniel Ryan sent his ex-wife Rachel an invitation not as an olive branch, but as a weapon. He wanted to parade his new life, his new wealth, and his perfect bride in front of the poor, forgotten woman he'd discarded. He reserved a seat for her at the worst table right by the kitchen. He just forgot one very important detail. He had no idea who Rachel had become. The envelope was an act of aggression. It wasn't paper. It was cardstock, heavy and thick as a tombstone, with the kind of creamy textured finish that whispered expensive before you even saw the contents. It arrived at Rachel Hayes's modest third-floor walk-up in a quiet tree-lined suburb, a glaring anomaly in her mailbox full of utility bills and grocery store flyers. Her name, Ms. Rachel Hayes, was written in swirling gold-leaf calligraphy. It felt like a mockery. She lived simply. After the divorce, simple was a necessity. Nathaniel Ryan, her ex-husband, had made sure of that. His legal team, a pack of polished sharks from the firm of Lockwood, Price & Gable, had systematically dismantled her life, painting her as an unsupportive, unambitious drain on his burgeoning genius. He was the golden boy of venture capital, the man with the Midas touch. She was just Rachel, the quiet wife who'd put her own engineering degree on hold to support his dream. The woman who'd managed his chaotic schedule, hosted his insufferable partners, and proofread the very business plans that had made him a millionaire. When he'd left her for Sabrina Davenport, the daughter of a real estate baron, his parting words had echoed in the sterile silence of their minimalist penthouse. "Look at this, Rachel," he'd sneered, gesturing at the skyline. "This is my world. You were just living in it. You'll be back in that little nothing town you came from within 6 months. You are nothing without me." Now, 2 years later she slid a kitchen knife under the wax seal, a pretentious custom V and D intertwined. The invitation inside was even more obscene. It was a 3-panel fold-out embossed with golden vines. Nathaniel Alexander Ryan and Sabrina Elizabeth Davenport request the pleasure of your company at the celebration of their union, Saturday the 14th of October at 5 o'clock in the evening, the Rutherford Grove Estate, Napa Valley. A smaller card slipped out. A handwritten note on Nathaniel's personal stationery. "Rachel, I know things ended poorly, but I'm in a much better place now. Sabrina and I truly want to share our happiness. Please come. I've saved a seat for you. It's important for me to know you're doing okay. All the best, Jay." Rachel sank onto her small second-hand sofa. The note was the cruelest part. Every word was a poisoned dart. "I'm in a much better place. Unlike you. Share our happiness. Parade my victory. Saved a seat for you. So I can point and laugh. It's important for me to know you're doing okay. It's important for me to confirm that you are not—" She laughed, a dry, humorless sound that startled her cat Copernicus. He hadn't saved a seat. He'd bought a ticket to a public execution. Her execution. He wanted her to show up in her 5-year-old department store dress, her sensible shoes, and her 2010 model sedan, if she could even afford the gas to drive to Napa. He wanted her to watch him marry an heiress at an estate that probably cost more for one night than Rachel's entire net worth. He wanted to disgrace her. He wanted a final definitive victory. He wanted to look across the sea of tuxedos and designer gowns and see his poor ex-wife, a living trophy of what he had escaped. Rachel walked to her window, looking not at the quiet street, but at the reflection in the glass. The woman looking back was tired, yes. Her hair was pulled into a functional ponytail and she wore an old MIT sweatshirt. But her eyes weren't a victim's. They were the eyes of a builder, the eyes of an engineer. "You saved me a seat, Nathaniel," she whispered to her reflection, the heavy invitation crinkling in her fist. "You have no idea what you've just done." She picked up her phone. It wasn't a brand-new flagship. It was a 3-year-old model, functional and secure. She didn't dial her best friend Chloe to cry. She didn't call her mother for support. She scrolled to a single contact marked only MT. The phone rang twice. A deep, precise voice answered. "Ms. Hayes?" "Mr. Thorne." Rachel said, her voice suddenly devoid of all exhaustion, replaced by a cold, clear resonance. "I need to requisition the company flagship." "The flagship, the Phantom." Marcus Thorne sounded surprised, a rare event. "We're in the middle of the Series B negotiations. Are you going to a pitch?" Rachel looked at the golden invitation. "No," she said, a slow, dangerous smile spreading across her face. "I'm going to a wedding." The wedding of Nathaniel Ryan and Sabrina Davenport was not an event. It was a campaign. Nathaniel sat in the walnut-paneled conference room of Ryan Capital, a sleek glass and steel monolith in San Francisco's financial district. Across from him, his new father-in-law, Harrison Davenport, nursed a glass of scotch. Harrison was old money, a man whose family had owned half of Nob Hill since the gold rush. He found Nathaniel to be loud, arrogant, and distressingly new. "I still don't understand why you're insisting on this," Harrison said, his voice a low rumble. He gestured to the seating chart displayed on a 90-inch monitor, inviting an ex-wife. "It's theatrical, Nathaniel, and bad form." "It's closure, Harrison," Nathaniel said, flashing the smile that had charmed countless investors. "Rachel was a big part of my formative years. I want her to see me now, to see this, to see that I've landed on my feet." "Landed on your feet?" Harrison raised a bushy silver eyebrow. "You're marrying my daughter at my Napa estate. It looks less like landing and more like docking." Nathaniel's smile tightened. He despised Harrison's condescending tone. This wedding was his coronation. It was his ascent from talented tech investor to dynastic power player. Sabrina was his prize, and her family's name was his validation. But Rachel was the one loose thread. She was the one person who knew him before the custom suits in the corner office. She knew the Nathaniel who'd cried in 2015 when his first fund nearly collapsed. She knew the Nathaniel who'd stolen the core algorithm from his first partner. She knew his insecurities, his frauds, his fragile, monstrous ego. And for that she had to be punished. "It's symbolic," Nathaniel insisted, turning to his wedding planner, a terrifyingly efficient woman named Blythe. "Table 28, is it confirmed?" "Yes, Mr. Ryan," Blythe said, tapping her tablet. "Table 28, as requested. It's efficient, close to the kitchen entrance and adjacent to the sound equipment." "Perfect," Nathaniel said. She always liked to be behind the scenes. Harrison Davenport watched his future son-in-law, a flicker of genuine distaste in his eyes. He'd seen men like Nathaniel before. They built empires on charisma and sand. But this was a special kind of petty. Later that evening, in their $20 million Pacific Heights mansion, Nathaniel found Sabrina reviewing the guest RSVPs. She was reclining on a sofa that cost more than a luxury car, flipping through the cards with a bored sigh. "Oh, good," she trilled, holding up a simple cream-colored card. "Your project RSVP'd." "She did." Nathaniel snatched the card. "Ms. Rachel Hayes, attending 1. He let out a sharp, triumphant laugh. "She's actually coming. I can't believe it. The audacity." "Or the desperation," Sabrina said, filing her nails. "What do you think she'll wear?" "Her old prom dress. I'm picturing something. Polyester." Nathaniel chuckled, pouring himself a Macallan 25. "God, this is going to be perfect. Did you tell Chad and Michael?" "Of course," Sabrina said. "Chad has a $500 bet on her bursting into tears during our vows. Michael bet $1,000 that she'll try to get drunk and make a scene at the bar." "I'll take the crying bet," Nathaniel said, clinking his glass against hers. "She was always a crier, so fragile. It's why I had to leave. I need a strong woman. Someone like you, baby." Sabrina smiled, a thin, satisfied expression. "Well, I want her there. I want her to see exactly what you traded up for. I want her to look at my custom Vera Wang, to see the 8-carat ring, to watch us fly away to Bora Bora, and to know, just know, that she is the before picture." Nathaniel leaned in and kissed her. "You're deliciously cruel, you know that." "I learned from the best," she whispered back. Neither of them cared about the why. They didn't wonder how Rachel had RSVP'd yes so calmly. In their world, a person like Rachel was a ghost, a relic of a past they had rewritten. She was a supporting character in their story, and she was about to play her final humiliating part. They were so busy planning the disgrace that they never once stopped to check the one place they should have the business pages. They never read the tech journals. They were too busy admiring their own reflections to see the tidal wave forming just off the coast. Rachel Hayes's apartment wasn't the den of a struggling divorcee. It was an incubator. The modest furniture was intentional. The old laptop was a decoy. The real work happened in the back bedroom, a room Nathaniel had never seen, which she'd converted into a state-of-the-art command center. 3 curved monitors glowed with lines of code-complex schematics and secure video feeds. The walls were lined with whiteboards covered in algorithms. This wasn't a home. It was the stealth mode HQ of Oratech. When Nathaniel had divorced her, he'd graciously given her a $50,000 settlement, a sum meant to be just enough for her to get back on her feet and disappear. He'd laughed about it with his lawyers. It's enough for a down payment on a studio in Bakersfield. He never knew that Rachel had been quietly cashing in stock options from her college internship at a small software company, a company that had since been acquired by Google. He also never knew that her side project in his garage, the one he'd dismissed as a cute little hobby, was a revolutionary design for a decentralized atmospheric water harvesting system powered by a new type of solar fabric. While Nathaniel was building his empire on flashy presentations and other people's ideas, Rachel was building something real. For 2 years, she had lived like a nun. Every cent of her settlement and her stock money went into R&D. She'd recruited 2 other brilliant engineers, Ben Carter and Dr. Eris Thorne, who'd also been burned by the boys' club of Silicon Valley. Dr. Eris Thorne was the key. He was the brother of Marcus Thorne, the billionaire investor. Eris, a reclusive genius in material science, had seen Rachel's thesis online and had been a mentor for years. When Nathaniel had pushed Rachel out, Eris had made one call. Marcus. Eris had said, "I've found her, the one who can actually do it, and she's angry." Marcus Thorne himself, a rival of Nathaniel's. Nathaniel had famously snubbed him at a tech conference years prior, calling him old world money with no vision, had met Rachel in a drab coffee shop in Palo Alto. She hadn't come with a flashy pitch deck. She'd brought a working prototype the size of a shoebox. She'd placed it on the table, added a single drop of water to a sensor, and a small fan had whirred to life powered by the ambient light in the cafe. "This is Aura," she'd said. "It's not a filter, it's a source. It pulls potable water from the air using a fabric that generates its own power. No grid, no pipes, just air and light." Nathaniel said it was cute. Marcus Thorne had looked at the device, then at the woman across from him, and he hadn't seen a poor ex-wife. He'd seen the next revolution. He'd seen the woman who would make desalination plants obsolete. "How much do you need?" he'd asked. "Enough to build a ghost," she'd replied. "I don't want to be on radars. I don't want to be in the news. Not yet. I want to build the infrastructure before the sharks start circling." So Marcus had funded her. His initial $20 million seed round was one of the best-kept secrets in the valley. While Rachel lived in her poor apartment, her company Oratech was building its first full-scale array in a hidden patch of the Mojave Desert. Now, 2 years later, the Series B funding round was closing. Oratech was no longer a ghost. It was a silent giant valued at $1.2 billion and was about to go public. The invitation hadn't made Rachel angry. It had clarified her timeline. She stood in her command center, the wedding invitation pinned to a whiteboard. Ben Carter, her lead engineer, was on the video call, his face pale. "Rachel, you can't be serious," Ben said. "This is his wedding, Nathaniel Ryan. The guy is a reptile. This is a trap." "Of course it's a trap, Ben," Rachel said, sipping her tea. But a trap only works if the prey is what the hunter expects. Nathaniel is expecting a mouse. He's about to get a dragon. But why even go? Because, Rachel said, her eyes glinting in the glow of the monitors, Ryan Capital is one of the lead firms trying to get in on our Series B funding round. Ben's jaw dropped. What? He doesn't know Oratech is... He has no idea. He just sees the valuation and the profit margins. He's been sending proposals to Mr. E. Hayes, assuming I'm a man. He's been trying to get a meeting with Marcus for months to get an introduction. He wants in. He needs in. His last 2 funds have been disastrous. Rachel finally unpinned the invitation. Nathaniel wanted me to come and see his world. I think it's only fair that I go and show him mine. So what's the plan? Ben asked, a slow smile spreading on his face. The team, we've got your back. You want us to project the company's stock performance onto the wedding cake. Rachel laughed, a genuine warm sound. Nothing so dramatic. I'm just going to attend, but I'm going to need a new dress. She logged into her personal terminal. Her poor bank account, the one Nathaniel's lawyers had scrutinized, still held a modest $4,000. But her other account, the one linked to her corporate holdings, was a different story. She made a call. Hello, is this the personal shopping office at Saks Fifth Avenue? Yes, this is Rachel Hayes. I need an appointment for this afternoon. And could you please have your top couture consultant meet me? I'll be coming from the city. Yes. Hayes, Hayes. The 3 weeks leading up to the wedding were a blur of high-stakes negotiations and meticulous preparation. Rachel operated on 2 parallel tracks. By day, she was the CEO of Oratech. She was finalizing the Series B, remotely managing the expansion of the Mojave Array, and personally reviewing the patent filings that would protect her intellectual property. She and Marcus Thorne were in constant contact, not about the wedding, but about the future. Nathaniel's firm, Ryan Capital, is getting desperate, Marcus said over a secure line, his voice crisp. He's over-leveraged. He bet big on a crypto platform that just imploded. He needs a win, Rachel. He needs us. He's been trying to leverage his new father-in-law's name, Harrison Davenport, to get to me. It's sloppy. Good, Rachel said, signing off on a shipping manifest. Let him be desperate. Desperate men make mistakes. And the wedding, Marcus asked, a rare hint of amusement in his voice. Is our logistics in place? The logistics are confirmed, Rachel said. The car will be there, I'll be there, and Nathaniel will be there. That's all the logistics we need. By night she was preparing for battle. This wasn't about a glow-up or a revenge body. Rachel had no interest in impressing Nathaniel with her appearance. This was about presence. It was about reminding him and herself of the woman she had always been, the woman he had tried to erase. She didn't go to a garish, trendy boutique. She went to a quiet appointment-only atelier run by a former lead designer for Armani. She didn't ask for a sexy dress. She asked for an authoritative one. I am not attending as a guest, Rachel explained to the designer, a woman named Genevieve. I am attending as a final statement. I need to be formidable. Genevieve, a woman who had dressed royalty and CEOs, studied Rachel. She saw the engineer's mind, the sharp intelligence, and the deep banked fire. Not formidable, Genevieve said, pulling a bolt of fabric. Inebriable, unavoidable. We will not use sequins which beg for light. We will not use bright colors which shout. We will use a color that absorbs all light. A deep sapphire blue so dark it's almost black. The material will be a heavy silk crepe. It will not float. It will drape. The structure will be architectural. Strong shoulders, a defined waist, a column skirt. You will look like you were carved from marble. The dress was a masterpiece. It was minimalist, severe, and breathtakingly elegant. It was the antithesis of Sabrina's sure-to-be-frothy diamond-encrusted gown. Next, the trifles, as Nathaniel would have called them. She went to Harry Winston. She didn't buy a new wedding ring. She bought a single spectacular piece, a necklace of cascading sapphires and diamonds, a piece so significant it was normally reserved for the Oscars. It wasn't jewelry, it was a balance sheet. Finally, she called her old friend Chloe. Chloe, a bubbly, kind-hearted lawyer who had been Rachel's only friend through the divorce. "Rachel." "Oh my God, I heard. You are not going to that monster's wedding, are you?" Chloe shrieked through the phone. "I am," Rachel said calmly. "No. Why, honey, you don't have to put yourself through that. We can go to Mexico. We can drink margaritas and throw darts at his picture." "Chloe, I need a +1. "What, you want me to go?" "No, I need you to be my alibi. When I don't show up at table 28, they're going to look for me. I need you to run interference." Chloe was confused. "Interference? What are you planning, Rachel? You're scaring me." "Don't be scared," Rachel said, looking at the finished dress hanging in her closet, a column of midnight blue. "I'm just closing a deal." The day before the wedding, Rachel held a final video conference with her team. Ben Carter and Dr. Eris Thorne were grinning from the control room in the Mojave. "The array is at 100% capacity, boss," Ben said. "We're officially producing 50,000 liters of potable water a day completely off-grid. The contracts with the NGOs are signed, the patents are filed. Oratech is bulletproof." "Excellent," Rachel said. "Have fun at the party." Eris chimed in, his dry wit evident. "Try not to commit any hostile takeovers." "No promises, Doctor," Rachel replied and signed off. She slept for 8 solid hours. When she woke up on the morning of the wedding, she did not feel nervous. She did not feel angry. She did not feel sad. She felt like a CEO on the day of an acquisition. She felt for the first time in years completely and totally like herself. The Rutherford Grove estate was a monument to excess. Nestled in the rolling, sun-drenched hills of Napa Valley, it was less a house and more a 19th-century French chateau that had been teleported to California. A long cypress-lined driveway led to a fountain that was larger than Rachel's first apartment. Nathaniel Ryan stood at the top of the grand marble steps, his arms securely around Sabrina's tiny waist. He was in his element. He was wearing a custom Tom Ford tuxedo, his hair perfectly coiffed. Sabrina was a vision in white, a frothy, sparkling creation that screamed, "I am the main character." Guests milled on the lawn, sipping champagne. They were the 1% of the 1%. Tech billionaires, real estate moguls, and the skeletal smiling scions of old money families. Nathaniel greeted them all with his dazzling predatory smile, but he was distracted. His eyes kept flicking to the driveway. "She's late," he murmured to Sabrina, checking his Rolex. The ceremony was due to start in 30 minutes. "Fashionably late," Sabrina scoffed. "More like her 2010 Sentra probably broke down on the grapevine. Don't worry, darling, she'll show. Paupers can't resist a free meal." "Excuse me, Mr. Ryan," the wedding planner. Blythe glided up her face, a mask of polite panic. "The string quartet, their lead cellist, is stuck in traffic. And we have a small issue at table 28. "What issue?" Nathaniel snapped. "Well, it's just the kitchen door. It swings out, and it's a bit squeaky. The proximity to the speakers is also causing a slight feedback." "I don't care," Nathaniel said, his voice low and cold. "Put her there. I don't care if a waiter spills soup on her. That is her seat. Am I clear?" "Crystal, sir," Blythe said and fled. Harrison Davenport. Sabrina's father watched this exchange from a distance. He shook his head and took another sip of his scotch. The boy is a cad, he thought. A theatrical, insecure cad. Then the sound came. It wasn't the sound of a sputtering engine. It was a low electric-like hum, a sound of such refined power that it made the birds in the cypress trees go silent. A car was coming up the driveway. But it wasn't a car. It was an event. It was a Rolls-Royce Phantom, not white for a wedding, not silver for a party. It was a deep, menacing obsidian black, polished to a mirror finish. It moved with the silent, terrifying grace of a shark. The Spirit of Ecstasy ornament on the hood seemed to cut the air. The car didn't stop at the valet line with the Porsches and Teslas. It drove past them up the private cobblestone path reserved for the bridal party and came to a perfect silent stop directly at the base of the marble steps. The entire party paused. Champagne glasses froze mid-sip. Conversations died. "Who the hell is that?" Sabrina hissed, her smile locked in place. "That's not one of my father's partners." Nathaniel stared, his mind racing. Was it a governor? A foreign dignitary? A guest he'd forgotten? A chauffeur in a black suit and cap emerged from the driver's side. He was a tall, imposing man who looked less like a driver and more like a high-level security detail. He walked with purpose to the rear passenger door and opened it. First, a shoe emerged. It was not a sensible flat. It was a sapphire blue stiletto from Manolo Blahnik, a shoe that cost more than Rachel's old monthly rent. Then a leg. And finally Rachel Hayes stood up. The sunlight hit her. She was a column of midnight blue. The heavy silk crepe dress didn't sparkle. It drank the light. Her hair was not in a ponytail. It was styled in a severe, elegant chignon at the nape of her neck. Around her throat, the Harry Winston necklace glittered a cascade of deep blue and blinding white fire. She was not the mousy, tear-stained woman Nathaniel remembered. She was not the poor ex-wife he'd planned to humiliate. This was Rachel Hayes, CEO. She looked like she had just stepped off the cover of Forbes. She looked like she could buy the entire estate and turn it into a research facility. She stood for a moment, letting the silence stretch her gaze, cool and assessing. Then she ascended the steps, her heels clicking with the sound of a gavel. Nathaniel Ryan's face went white. The blood drained from it so fast he looked like a marble statue. Sabrina, for her part, looked utterly bewildered. Her perfectly painted mouth opened slightly. Who is that?" She whispered, her voice a mixture of confusion and, for the first time, fear. Rachel reached the top of the steps. She stood before them, a small, polite smile on her face. She was not crying. She was not angry. She looked amused. "Nathaniel," she said, her voice clear and carrying in the silence. "Sabrina, thank you so much for the invitation. You have a lovely home." The world tilted on its axis. Nathaniel Ryan stared at Rachel as if she were an apparition. His mind, usually so quick and cruel, was a blank, static-filled screen. He'd prepped for tears for a scene for faded polyester. He had not prepped for this. This power. "Rachel!" He stammered, his voice an octave too high. You look... My God, you... Who?" He gestured vaguely at the Rolls-Royce, which was now purring silently away. "Did you win the lottery?" It was the only explanation his brain could conjure. Rachel's smile remained. "Something like that, Nathaniel. I've had some good investments." Sabrina, recovering her composure, stepped forward, her competitive instincts kicking in. She deployed her iciest smile. "Well, Rachel, what a surprise. That's a lovely costume. I'm so glad you could make it. We were worried you might feel out of place." "Not at all," Rachel replied, her gaze sweeping over the opulent lawn. "It's always good to survey the market. Now, where am I sitting? I wouldn't want to miss the ceremony." Nathaniel snapped back to reality. The script, his script. This was his chance to regain control. "Ah, yes. Your seat," he said, a malicious glint returning to his eyes. He motioned to Blythe, the planner, who was hovering nervously. "Blythe, will you show Miss Hayes to her seat, table 28? He emphasized the number, watching Rachel's face for a flicker of humiliation. "Table 28. Rachel repeated, her expression unreadable. "Wonderful. Thank you, Nathaniel." She turned and followed Blythe, her blue dress a slash of color against the pale pastels of the other guests. Nathaniel and Sabrina watched her go, the whispers on the lawn starting to swell like a hornet's nest. What was that? Sabrina hissed at Nathaniel, her nails digging into his arm. That necklace. Nathaniel, that was real. It's a rental, Nathaniel said, though a cold dread was pooling in his stomach. It's all a show. She's bluffing. She's just trying to save face. Wait until she sees the table. She'll be in tears by the soup. Rachel walked with Blythe across the perfect lawn toward the reception terrace. As they approached, she saw it. Table 28. It was, as promised, a small, sad round table pushed into an alcove practically touching the swinging metal door of the kitchen. A massive black-thumped speaker stood next to it. Blythe looked mortified. Ms. Hayes, my apologies. It's perfectly fine, Rachel said. She reached the table. She looked at the single sad place setting, and then she kept walking. She walked right past it. Ms. Hayes, Blythe called, confused. Your table. Rachel didn't stop. She walked with calm, unhurried purpose toward the front of the terrace where the bridal party's families were seated at long, decorated tables. She walked past Nathaniel's parents, who looked at her in stunned recognition. She walked past the empty seats for the bride and groom. She stopped at the head table where Harrison Davenport, the patriarch, was nursing his scotch and observing the chaos. He looked up as her shadow fell over him. Mr. Davenport, Rachel said, extending a hand. Rachel Hayes, it's a pleasure to finally meet you in person. Harrison, a man who had not been surprised since the dot-com bubble burst, stared at her hand and then her face. I'm sorry. Should I know you? We haven't spoken directly, Rachel said, but my team led by Marcus Thorne has been in negotiations with your East Asia Acquisitions Fund. I'm the founder and CEO of Auratech. Harrison Davenport dropped his scotch. The glass shattered on the flagstones. The sound was as loud as a gunshot. Every head, including Nathaniel's and Sabrina's, whipped toward the head table. Harrison was on his feet, his face ashen, ignoring the glass at his feet. You're E. Hayes. You're Auratech. Auratech. The name rippled through the crowd. Auratech, the mystery company, the one valued at over $1 billion, the one that was about to revolutionize green energy and water reclamation, the company everyone wanted a piece of. I am, Rachel said. My God, Harrison sputtered. We've been trying to get a meeting with you for 6 months. Your atmospheric harvesting tech, it's the Holy Grail. It is, Rachel agreed calmly. Which is why we're being so selective about our Series B partners. Marcus and I were just reviewing your proposal this morning. At that exact moment, as if summoned, a second, even more impressive car arrived. A silver Bentley Mulsanne. A man stepped out. He was tall, impeccably dressed, in a Savile Row suit with a shock of silver hair and eyes like steel. He was one of the most powerful and reclusive investors in the world, Marcus Thorne. He strode onto the terrace, spotted Rachel, and smiled. Rachel, my apologies for being late. The call with the engineers in Mojave ran long. He walked up to the head table, completely ignoring Nathaniel and Sabrina, who were frozen in a tableau of horror. Harrison. Marcus nodded curtly to the older man. Good to see you. Marcus. Harrison was now practically bowing. I had no idea that you knew. Rachel is my most valued partner, Marcus said, his voice projecting clearly. I go where she goes. In fact, I'm her +1. Rachel, where are we sitting? I hope it's somewhere we can talk. We need to decide whether to accept Harrison's offer. Nathaniel Ryan felt the blood leave his head. He stumbled forward, his face a grotesque mask of fake joviality. Marcus Thorne. What a surprise, he brayed. And Rachel, you're Auratech. My Rachel. Rachel finally turned her cool gaze on him. I was never your Rachel, Nathaniel. I was just the woman who balanced your books and fixed your broken business plans. And it's Ms. Hayes. But, Ryan Capital. Nathaniel was sputtering, his entire future imploding in front of him. My proposal for the Series B, I sent it in weeks ago. I've been trying to. We're perfect partners. Rachel looked at him. The amusement was gone. Her eyes were polar ice. Yes, your proposal, she said. I read it. It was thin. Much like your innovations in 2016. You're over-leveraged, Nathaniel. Your flagship fund is underwater and you're trying to use my company as a life raft. A collective gasp went up from the crowd. This wasn't a wedding. It was a public execution. Sabrina, finally realizing what was happening, stepped forward, her face contorted in rage. How dare you! You came here to ruin my wedding. Rachel didn't even look at her. She kept her eyes locked on Nathaniel. You invited me, Nathaniel, she said, her voice dangerously quiet. You sent me an invitation to watch your triumph. You wanted to disgrace me. You sat me at table 28 by the kitchen so I could watch you celebrate the life you built on the foundations I laid. She took a step closer. Nathaniel instinctively recoiled. So I came, not as your poor ex-wife, but as the CEO of the company you are desperately, pathetically trying to get into. I came to give you my answer in person. She paused, letting the silence stretch. Ryan Capital's proposal is rejected. We don't partner with firms that have ethical liabilities. Rachel, Nathaniel whispered, his entire body trembling. Please, don't do this. We can talk. We have nothing to talk about, Rachel said. She turned to Harrison Davenport, who was watching Nathaniel with utter contempt. Harrison, Marcus, shall we find a quieter place to discuss your proposal? I believe the bridal suite is empty. I'm sure the bride won't mind. Marcus Thorne offered Rachel his arm. An excellent idea, Ms. Hayes. As they turned to walk away, Sabrina let out a sound of pure, unadulterated fury. She snatched a glass of champagne from a passing tray and threw it not at Rachel, but at Nathaniel. You idiot, she screamed as the champagne soaked his Tom Ford tuxedo. You told me she was nothing. You told me she was poor. You married me when you could have had her. The implication was clear. Nathaniel wasn't the prize. He was the consolation. Rachel and Marcus didn't even look back. They walked past the stunned guests, past the string quartet, and into the chateau, leaving Nathaniel Ryan standing in the ruins of his own wedding, soaked in champagne, staring at the woman he'd destroyed, who had just returned to destroy him. The sound of shattering glass was followed by a shriek of such primal wounded fury that it silenced the string quartet for good. The wedding of Nathaniel Ryan and Sabrina Davenport had not just been interrupted, it had been surgically, catastrophically dismantled. Sabrina, her face a grotesque mask of champagne mascara and rage, was still screaming. You idiot! You absolute penniless fraud! You told me she was nothing! Nathaniel, soaked and trembling, could only stammer, Sabrina, baby, listen, it's a misunderstanding. She's lying. But no one was listening to him. The guests, that ecosystem of the ultra-wealthy, were already reacting. This was a social contagion. Reputations were currency, and Nathaniel's had just been declared counterfeit. Phones were out not to take pictures but to send texts. Ryan Capital. Toxic. Nathaniel Ryan. Finished. Did you hear Harrison Davenport's son-in-law? A total fraud. Investors were already edging away, murmuring urgent calls to their wives. Chad and Michael, the two men who had bet on Rachel's tears, were staring at each other, their $1,000 bet forgotten. They weren't just losing a bet. They were witnessing the implosion of a man they had tied their own portfolios to. Blythe, the wedding planner, simply stood holding her clipboard, her face a perfect blank mask of professional horror. The event was a total loss. While the chaos bloomed on the terrace, a hallowed silence reigned in the chateau's library. Harrison Davenport was pacing on the antique Persian rug, his hands clasped so tightly behind his back his knuckles were white. He was no longer the stunned father. He was the enraged CEO. "A fool," he muttered, his voice a low growl. "No, not a fool. A fool is harmless. He's a parasite. He attached himself to my family name. He used my credibility." He whipped around to face Rachel, who was sitting calmly in a leather wingback chair sipping a glass of water. Marcus Thorne stood by the fireplace observing. "You knew this," Harrison accused, though not unkindly. "You knew he was over-leveraged." "I knew his crypto fund had collapsed," Rachel said, her voice even. "I knew his last two ventures were smoke and mirrors. And I knew he was trying to use your name, Mr. Davenport, to backstop his losses. His proposal to Oratech wasn't a pitch. It was a plea for a bailout. He was going to use your daughter's name and my company to save himself." Harrison stared at her, the pieces clicking into place. The theatricality of the wedding, the desperation to get it done, the endless favors he'd asked for the introductions. "And you," Harrison turned to Marcus, "you let him walk right into this." "We do our due diligence, Harrison," Marcus said, his voice crisp. "Something your team should have done on your future son-in-law instead of just admiring his press clippings. Rachel didn't create this situation. She merely illuminated it." Harrison let out a long, heavy breath and sank into the chair opposite Rachel. The fury was gone, replaced by the cold, hard calculus of damage control. "So, my daughter is tied to a fraud. My family name is attached to this fiasco. That," Rachel said, leaning forward slightly, "is a problem. But it's also an opportunity. As I said, Ryan Capital is finished, but Davenport Holdings is not. Your East Asia infrastructure is exactly what Oratech needs for its Phase 2 deployment. We are prepared to offer you an exclusive 2% stake in our next round. It's a deal that will by morning be the only thing the financial world is talking about, not your daughter's unfortunate choice in men." Harrison looked from Rachel to Marcus and back. She wasn't just offering him a deal. She was offering him a new narrative, a life raft. He could pivot from father of the fraud to visionary partner of Oratech. A slow, dry laugh escaped his lips. "Ms. Hayes, you are a shark, and I mean that as the highest possible compliment. You came to your ex-husband's wedding and engineered a hostile takeover of his entire life." "I just accepted an invitation, Mr. Davenport," Rachel said, standing up. "We'll have my legal team send the term sheet to your general counsel, not your family lawyer, your general counsel. I suggest you have him look at it by, say, 8 a.m., Monday." Harrison stood and shook her hand, his grip firm. "He'll be waiting. Now, if you'll excuse me, I believe I have to fumigate my family. Annulment is too clean a word. I'm going to have him excised." He strode out of the room, a man with a new singular purpose. "Well," Marcus said, a rare genuine smile touching his lips. "When I first met you in that coffee shop, you were angry. Now, you're not." "Anger is fuel, Marcus," Rachel said, adjusting the strap of her dress. "It gets you started, but you can't run an empire on it. I'm not angry. I'm just balanced. The books are finally balanced." "Shall we?" he asked, offering his arm. They walked out the grand front entrance, bypassing the chaotic scene on the terrace. The chauffeur Thomas already had the Rolls-Royce door open, the engine humming its silent, powerful tune. The sun was beginning to set, casting long, dramatic shadows across the cobblestones. "Rachel!" The voice was a desperate, primal scream. Nathaniel came bursting from a side door, running, his tuxedo jacket gone, his tie ripped from his neck, his hair a wild mess. He stumbled to a stop in front of her, his face a ruin of tears, sweat, and terror. "Rachel, please, you can't. You can't do this to me. It's me. It's Nathaniel. Remember, Remember, Chicago. Our plans. Everything I built. Ms. Hayes. Thomas, the chauffeur, stepped forward, placing his large frame partially between them. Rachel held up a single calm hand. It's all right, Thomas. I'll handle this. Nathaniel lunged, grabbing her arm. Rachel, please, I'll give you anything a stake in the company. Half it's all yours. Just make the call. Call Harrison, call Marcus. Tell them it was a misunderstanding. Tell them we're merging a new partnership. Rachel looked down at his hand on her arm. Her gaze so cold he flinched and pulled it back as if he'd been burned. Merging, Nathaniel, she said, her voice devoid of all emotion. There is nothing to merge. Your company is a house of cards, a hollow shell. You are bankrupt. You just don't know it yet. That's not true. I'm Ryan Capital. No, you're not, Rachel said. You're a thief. I know about Mark Dawson, your first partner, the one from 2015 who had a nervous breakdown and moved back to Ohio. I know you stole his core algorithm for your first funds trading bot. I know you paid him $30,000 to sign an NDA I drafted because you told me he was unstable and trying to steal from you. I was so naive. I didn't know I was helping you bury him. Nathaniel's face went from white to a sickly shade of gray. That was the killing blow. You stand here and you talk about everything we had. Rachel continued, her voice a surgical blade. You had a partner you betrayed. You had a co-founder you defrauded. You had a wife who put her own career, her own degree on hold to build your dream, to proofread your lies, and to fix your mistakes. And you discarded all of them. She took a step back toward the open door of the car. I didn't destroy you, Nathaniel. I just stopped being your shield. I stopped holding you up. You are a black hole, and I am simply moving out of your orbit. You are your own ruin. Enjoy the event horizon. No, he whispered, falling to his knees on the hard cobblestones. No, Rachel, don't leave me. Rachel paused, one foot in the car. You said I would be nothing without you, Nathaniel. You invited me here today to prove it. You just forgot one thing. What? He sobbed. You were always, always nothing without me. She slid into the plush leather. The heavy door closed with a solid, definitive, and final thunk. Nathaniel Ryan was left on his knees, a broken, pathetic man in a ruined tuxedo, screaming her name as the obsidian Rolls-Royce crunched over the gravel, turned onto the cypress-lined drive, and disappeared into the golden Napa sunset, taking his entire world with it. Oh! Epilogue. 1 year later. The cover of Forbes magazine was not a man in a suit. It was Rachel Hayes, standing in the Mojave Desert, her hand on one of the massive gleaming solar fabric panels of the Oratech array. A slight confident smile on her face. The headline blared, "The Water Baron: How Rachel Hayes Built a $10 billion Empire from Thin Air." Her company's IPO had been the most successful of the decade. Oratech's water-from-air technology was no longer a secret. It was a revolution being deployed in drought-stricken regions from sub-Saharan Africa to California. In her office, she wasn't looking at the Forbes cover. She was on a secure video call with a field team in a small village, watching a child drink clean, safe water from a tap that hadn't existed 3 weeks prior. The $10 billion valuation was a tool, not a trophy. And Nathaniel Ryan Capital had ceased to exist within 6 weeks of the wedding. Once Rachel and Harrison Davenport had announced their partnership, Nathaniel's other investors had fled, triggering a margin call he couldn't meet. The SEC, triggered by the sudden catastrophic collapse and an anonymous tip from Mark Dawson, who had been contacted by Rachel's lawyers, had opened an investigation. They found everything: the stolen algorithm, the wire fraud, the years of lies. The vulture of the valley, the New York Post had called him. His parents had publicly disowned him. Chad and Michael, the two bettors, had both given damning testimony against him in exchange for immunity. Nathaniel Ryan was currently in a federal prison awaiting sentencing on multiple counts of fraud. Sabrina's fate was less criminal, but just as predictable. The marriage was annulled by Harrison's legal team before the ink was dry. A Page 6 sighting had placed her at the Monaco Grand Prix, where she was reportedly escorted from the premises after a confrontation with a security guard while trying to get into an exclusive party. She was cut off and adrift, a ghost of a life she'd almost had. Rachel sat in her new office. It was not a sterile glass and steel box. It was an airy, sustainable space with living walls and a view of the Golden Gate Bridge. Ben Carter, her first engineer and now her COO, knocked on the open door. "Boss," he said, smiling, "this came for you. It got past the main security filter. Looked important." He handed her a thick, creamy envelope. For one brief second, Rachel's expression tightened. It looked familiar. "You okay?" Ben asked. "Just a memory," she said, her voice quiet. She slid her finger under the seal. It was not a wedding invitation. It was from her alma mater, MIT. They were formally inviting Ms. Rachel Hayes to be the keynote speaker at their commencement, and in recognition of her revolutionary contributions to material science and humanitarian aid, they were conferring upon her an honorary doctorate of engineering. Dr. Rachel Hayes. She thought of the young woman she had been, the brilliant student who had put her PhD on hold to proofread Nathaniel's genius business plans. The woman who had coded his first platforms in their tiny apartment, believing in his dream. She looked at the invitation. She looked at the blueprints for the new R&D facility on her monitor. She hadn't just reclaimed her name. She had reclaimed her work. She had reclaimed her mind. Rachel Hayes picked up a pen, not to sign a deal, but to begin writing her acceptance speech. She smiled as she wrote the first line. An engineer's first principle is integrity. A structure, whether it's a bridge or a life, cannot stand on a weak foundation. The work was just beginning. Nathaniel wanted to show Rachel what she had lost. Instead, she showed him and the entire world what he had thrown away. He built his kingdom on sand, and she built hers on genius. This isn't just a story about revenge. It's a story about resilience. It's a reminder that the people who underestimate you are often the ones who are most afraid of your potential. What did you think of Rachel's comeback? Was it the perfect revenge? Or was it just business? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. If you love this story of triumph, please hit that like button. Share it with someone who needs a dose of inspiration, and make sure you subscribe to our channel for more true life stories where the underdog always gets the last word. Click that notification bell so you never miss an update.